Lesson 50, topic, the angels associated with the previous lesson, how angels relate to the recently deceased and how they help them get out of the predicament they are in, especially those in the lower astral plane. Greetings, brothers and sisters. In this lesson, I will delve deeper into a topic that I only touched upon superficially in the previous lesson. It will be interesting for you to learn how angels interact on a profound level with the recently deceased or those who have passed on not so recently. When someone has passed away, whether recently or not, and has gone to the other side, they have little or no knowledge of where they are going. If they are still attached to Earth, their destination is usually the lower astral plane. As I mentioned in the previous lesson, it is a place very similar to the hell you describe, but not as terrible. It is, however, full of sadness and evil, and sometimes a great silence, a dark place filled with much sadness and loneliness. In this case, angels tend to interact little in these lower astral dimensions because they are usually barred from access, as these are terrible places, filled with people with very bad intentions who do not want to evolve towards the Father. Sometimes this is different. It sometimes happens that the deceased want to leave this terrible place, and then they don't know who to call. The most appropriate thing would be to call their guardian angel, but usually the angel doesn't come because he is already assigned to another person whom it has to watch over. Therefore, the deceased feels lost, not knowing who to call or who to turn to in order to leave this place. I advise you to tell all of this, which I am going to say, to people who are going to die soon, so that nothing terrible happens to them after they have passed away. To show you the right path, I will describe what you must do when you are in this lower astral dimension and are completely lost. You must desire to speak with the Father. If you do so with enough force, he will hear you and send an angel to act as an intermediary to contact you, and he will arrange a way out of this terrible place. Normally, direct communication between the Father and the deceased is not direct. The deceased is in this lower astral dimension by their own doing, very attached to the earth and has a very low mental level. They only wish to do harm to others who have bothered them so much and brought them to this place. They still perceive that others are to blame for this situation. They do not see themselves as guilty or responsible at all. Therefore, the Father, who is infinite love, knowing that direct communication is not possible, sends an intermediary angel to help them. This intermediary angel will act as a judge of the deceased situation, observing their circumstances and analyzing their life. With the deceased's help, they will talk at length, without any rush, and thus, by mutual agreement, they will determine what the deceased deserves to experience from now on, always trying to guide them to a place where the learning will be beneficial and bring them closer to the Father. This means that sometimes it may happen that the deceased does not deserve to leave the lower plane astral so soon. They have to learn from the mistakes because they have come this far. And in some cases, some deceased learn this lesson sooner, even in a terrible place. No evil lasts forever. Nothing is infinite, only the love of the Father. If they have to be in this dimension for 100 or 200 years, they will be, but they will eventually leave because they will learn their lesson. In other cases, the judgment is more benevolent because the deceased has earned the right to leave. In that place, they have learned from their mistakes, and then both the deceased and the intermediary angel know that they have to go to a better place to learn, so the departure will be soon. Once the person is ready to depart, when the time has come for them to leave, the intermediary angel will come. It will usually be the same one, though it depends on how busy they are. In any case, the Father will arrange for an intermediary angel to carry out this mission. This angel will guide the deceased to their rightful place. They will have already instructed them sufficiently, as they have been speaking for a long time, and then the subsequent learning will be much easier. From now on, the intermediary angel will no longer be responsible for the learning and evolution of the deceased, except on rare occasions, unless the Father assigns them in this mission. But this doesn't usually happen. The mission of learning then passes to the spiritual teachers of this level of heaven, to which the deceased has gone, and thus the progress of their learning must continue. This is the minimum knowledge that all those who will pass away soon should have, presented to them as something important they must know. If they are afraid of the dying process because they have had a near-death experience before or have had nightmares about it, and these were quite negative, they shouldn't be overly frightened. The Father's love is infinite and will not allow this to happen again. The deceased or dying person in this case must do something to prevent it from happening again. They must change their life, recognize the mistakes they have made, and thus clear the path of their spiritual evolution. There is still time. Another piece of advice: when you die, what you should do is find people in this lower astral plane who can help you. There will always be some spirit or some deceased person or some spiritual entity that wants to lend a hand. Don't let yourself be led astray by evil, because negative spirits are often very deceptive, very dishonest. They deceive you with a good physical appearance, but in reality, they are terrible inside. That's what those who are going to die have to learn. They shouldn't be guided by the appearance of the spiritual entities they see. They should try to see inside. They should subject the spiritual entity that wants to help them to a thorough interrogation, because many times what they want is to bring you into the realm of evil. They have you work on the side of negative spirits to fulfill their evil plans. It is important that you understand this early on, because it is often not easy to escape from these groups of evil. Regarding the deceased, I think that's enough for another lesson. I'll address this very interesting topic, and I've only said things about it so far which you might find quite curious. What happens on other occasions is that angels, especially now and in ancient times, were connected to our space brothers. They have often worked in parallel together. Sometimes you can invoke the angels to communicate with our space brothers. The communication will always be good, because the angels will always seek out those space brothers who care for humanity, who don't want to enslave it, who don't want to create hybrid species, who don't want to invade the planet, who only want to manage all its resources for their own benefit. On the contrary, they will only put you in contact with those who seek the benefit of humanity and its positive evolution toward the Father. This is a good way to find space brothers with whom it is worthwhile to communicate. The angels perform many other tasks, but I'll cover those in other lessons. I don't want this lesson to get too long. I don't like to go beyond 3 or 4 appendices in each lesson, because it can become tedious for many people, always talking about the same thing repeatedly. Many people might find it boring. I prefer to do it with interspaced lessons, or lessons separated by other lessons that address different topics. So that's enough for today. I don't want to go on too long. And then see you soon, brothers and sisters.